becoming blurred by so much said. I'm in too deep waters I tread, can't catch my breath. A shadow chasing me, a game of hide and seek. Found now have a All right, welcome everyone to another version of Deconversion Stories. I said that totally wrong, but that's okay because I just realized I never actually took a look at this rap background thing that we have here that Mikey made for me a little while ago. Which reminds me, guys, Mikey is not with us tonight because he's having some family issues. So he's taking the night off and he will join us again this coming weekend, I'm pretty sure. Also, I just made a executive decision. Is my very good friend Oz's anniversary stream tonight. So I had set up an after party, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to go an after party over at Oz's channel and help him celebrate his second year anniversary. So we're not going to do one on this channel tonight, but you can find us over on Oz's channel after this. So anyways, welcome to the show, Kathy.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
My pleasure. One question I want to ask you before we get into the deconstruction stuff. How is it that you put up with Oz for so long?
I lived on the East Coast for a good while he was growing up.
So you weren't, or you didn't have to put up with him for that much. Oh, that okay.
No, long distance relationships sometimes are okay, and other times, I love you, nephew. I love you.
Just had to get that out there.
Yes.
Oz, Oz is awesome. I've hung out with him now when we did the Faithless Forum down in Texas there, and he's a great guy. So
yeah, he's got a good heart.
Definitely does. Yeah, for sure. But anyways, Kathy, what I do here is I chat with folks about how they found their way out of whatever belief systems they're once a part of. So I basically ask folks to take us back into the days of being indoctrinated and how those dominoes started falling.
Okay, well, there's some background I think I need to give before the actual time of getting the indoctrination. I'm the oldest of 4 children. And I was in the Lutheran school for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. And then my father was an alcoholic, a very abusive man. And by the time I was 14, I was taken away from the family and placed in foster care because of the kinds of abuse that were going on in the home. And I was in my 4th foster home, which happened to be one that was owned by a church. And it was a girls only group home. And part of the requirements of the girls' home was that you were at the church every time the doors were open. And
oh yay.
Well, I mean, it wasn't so bad. One thing that I noticed when I first moved into that group home was that there was a calmness and a peace in that house that I had never felt anywhere, except perhaps at my grandparents' homes. You know,
right.
My grandparents were my real stability. But my 2nd or 3rd week of going Sunday morning, Sunday night, Thursday night, there was a young man who was being baptized, and he gave his testimony of how he was pretty high and he was driving a Volkswagen Beetle. You know, this is back in the days of the hippies. So, so I was one of them Jesus people, or turned into being one. Anyway.
Right. Hold it. Were you not quite that religious before all of that? Or?
No, I was not. After the 2nd grade, we didn't go to church anywhere. It was rare for us to go to church. We moved away from the area where the Lutheran school was, and my dad chose to spend money other ways than to pay for busing for me to go to school at the private school. So,
Right.
and it was, the situation in the home actually was a type of indoctrination that set me up for what I got into when I got into the church.
I got you. Okay.
Got me?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Because
certainly do.
I heard this young man's testimony. I started to cry.
Mhm.
I just felt a sense of love. And I went downstairs. I was sitting up in the balcony. I went downstairs, and my foster dad happened to be right there in the hallway. And he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Whatever he has, I want." And I prayed the sinner's prayer and immediately got submerged in Christianity,
Okay.
by my own choice, as well as part of the rules of the household. I found then that I wanted to be there, you know.
Right. Right.
It wasn't long until several hippie types started coming to that church.
Hmm.
And we met together with the pastor. There were 7 of us that met with him on a regular basis, and eventually started a coffee house that wound up having an international outreach. I don't know
Okay.
if you have familiarity with the,
We have outreach programs up here.
well,
Okay.
Petra. Have you heard of the band Petra?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Well, they started out of the coffee house that I helped to start.
Wow. Really?
Yes,
Interesting.
sir. Yes. The thing that's been interesting on my vacation is that I'm writing the history of the coffee house ministry to turn in, and it's hard to write when you're no longer in it and say the words that people want to hear when you're not in it anymore. It's very challenging.
Yeah, because I guess you kind of got to pretend that you're still in
Yes.
that mindset just so you can write,
Yes.
right?
And
Yeah.
it was hard. But anyway, it was through there, I stayed in the foster home for a while longer until my house parents moved and to go to schooling for language for missions.
Mhm.
Went to another foster home, and then life just goes on. I stayed a Christian for 50 years. However, life had lots of ups and downs and backs and forths, and I don't know what all of that you want me to get into, but I could see
Well, you sort of
how the abuse that was in my home really did set me up to be willing to willingly take on some indoctrination that the churches give out.
right. Your
Such
situation, I guess, made you reach out for or look for something that would be comforting to you, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I
Yeah.
wanted. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be cared for and protected and provided for. I mean, we had many days of no food and no electricity. And
Oh, boy.
I mean, it was a really bad situation I grew up in. And so definitely when I saw something presented to me that had stability, um, I I wanted that. I needed that.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I sort of had blinders on then. And all I could see was, I couldn't see the bad going on at all. All I could see was what might be helpful to me.
Right. Which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you say you ended up being a believer for 50 years, you said?
Yes, sir.
All right.
50
So
years.
yeah, well, tell us a little bit about some of the highlights, I guess, of that. Like what did you do any missionary type work, or did you do any social work, like in the community, like, handing out blankets, stuff like that? Or
I was married to a pastor for 30 years.
oh,
I worked for Pat Robertson's ministry.
what?
Do
Really?
those things count? Yes, sir.
And certainly, I want to hear a little bit about that.
I was
What was it like being married to a pastor, first of all?
Part of me really loved it because I love people
Mhm.
and I loved being able to help people. But I didn't like that it was, you basically live two lives, what's in front of the people versus what's at home.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's very different. And I know lots of pastors' wives who would say the same thing.
Sure.
And it's a different
I've heard that
kind of
before.
abuse. It was not because of the indoctrination of the woman's role. You always had to have headship over you. You always had to submit. You always had to seek prayer for, there wasn't any way you could have an answer for anything without praying first. And then you had to make sure the husband agreed with what you felt was possible. And if he didn't, then tough luck for you. Yeah. You also had to always seek the counsel of the scriptures. And I was an avid student of the Bible. I took some classes from Pacific Christian University, and then other classes from like church biblical schools. And then my ex was had 12 years of Greek, so I picked his brain a lot in my personal study times.
Did you learn a little Greek, or?
I don't mess with any of it now. I had flashcards. I learned the alphabet with flashcards, and knew little bits, and I knew how to use the tools to help me along in studying. I mean, I did glean that out of 30 years with him. When I went to work at CBN, I had been married twice, and my first marriage, he was a Christian who backslid very early on in our marriage, and was pretty much, it was a repetition of my parents' marriage. And that was a point I wanted to bring out tonight a little bit, is that just because you pray the prayer and ask Jesus into your heart doesn't make your life different.
No.
I was in the pattern and in the psychological patterns of abuse, of living with abuse, and living with a man who was narcissistic. And so even though my first husband and I had prayed the sinner's prayer and done all that, to make life wonderful, I was soon caught back up in living the life my mother lived, and he was my dad.
Wow.
Yeah. And talk about praying, God, why is this happening to me? Well, there wasn't the psychological help that you need. And I don't care how many prayers you pray, it doesn't change how you think. And the patterns that have been really. Right. Well, it doesn't change. They talk about how with the patterns that go on, the brain has like these grooves of thinking, and nothing changes if somebody doesn't help you reset those grooves and form new pathways. And so I was caught up in the old pathway, and just I was married to him for about 12 years. And most of the time we were separated, or he was in the military, so he was gone quite a bit. I have two beautiful daughters from that marriage. And I'm very grateful for them, and that we are on good speaking terms. We've gone through lots. And then it was while I was working at CBN that I met my second husband.
Okay.
So
he was the pastor.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And that,
so what was
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just thought that was the bee's knees, that I could be a pastor's wife. Oh, Lord.
Well, if you put yourself back in that would be like the ultimate, I guess, for you.
It would have if we'd had a big successful church, but we had a little church in a podunk town in South Georgia, and it was live in poverty for sure. Oh, my experiences at CBN were, the first day I worked there, I thought I was going to be working in, a little piece of heaven, and it was just going to be like floating on a cloud. Boy, was I naive. by the end of that day, I realized that wherever people are, you have hell on earth.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you have secrets that are kept and things that are not kept out in the for the public to know, or the staff is protected. And yeah, it was a wild ride there. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself and my skills.
Okay.
And I worked in administration and did quite well there and loved it. Loved that part of the challenge of it. I didn't like having to keep my mouth shut when I saw things that I knew weren't quite in the scriptures the way they were being displayed.
Right, right.
And I worked in a department that was called teleministry.
Okay.
And what teleministry was, instead of calling it telemarketing, which is what it really was, we would call partners to pray with them, of course. But by the end of the conversation, it was usually to ask if they'd be interested in increasing their pledge. And we had a script we had to follow. We were timed. When I first started, we were on the old-fashioned telephone, do it yourself. And by the time I left, we had all the computerized stuff. So evidently some partners upped their ante because we could afford to get the new equipment. I did meet Pat Robertson himself, and every Friday we had a all-staff chapel service that met in the studio. We got to meet the guest, and Pat or whoever was there to do the program that day with him would usually stay for our chapel service, and music and teaching. So lots of indoctrination.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that continued in his teaching was very much like what I had come out of. One church in particular that stressed the importance of a woman always having a man to be her covering. I mean, it's like a woman couldn't think for herself,
Right.
And had to be protected and covered and all of that. So thus I enter a marriage with a pastor. And of course, part of my teaching was that not only was I supposed to be submissive, but he was supposed to take care of everything. He was supposed to be the one that would take care of the finances and, all that kind of stuff. Well, that didn't happen in our home. So it was because of my deep sense of loyalty. I'm a very loyal person to a fault. And it was, it was one day when I just finally said to myself, I can't do this anymore. And I packed my bag while he was gone for the morning. And when he got home, I was gone and never went back. Yeah, never went back. So I've been on my own for 7 years now. And been readjusting. But during that time was when lots of questions were happening. I think my deconstruction really started around the time of right before my separation from him and eventual divorce.
So what kind of things were you thinking about at that time that you figure probably started to snowball for you?
A lot was very many unanswered prayers. A lot was, why in the world, if I have given my everything to you, God, why is this what I get?
Right.
Why am I living in a situation like this that I didn't ask for it? I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to do. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Right. And it's interesting, though, once I separated from him, I went back home. Here I was in my early 60s, and I went back home to mom and dad, who my stepdad, when I called him and said, can I come home? He said, I've been waiting on this phone call for a long time.
Wow, really?
Yes. Yes.
Was he not a fan of that husband, or?
No, he wasn't. So I he was always cordial to him
Yeah,
and everything. But
Sure.
anyway, I went to stay with them. And what I did for the first month is every day I read to myself out loud at least one book in the in the New Testament, because I thought, I'm going to get peace somehow, and it's got to be from God's word. I don't know any other way. And I did that, and I still didn't get peace. And I did not go to church for quite a while because he had been a pastor in the community, had been a part of community pastoral prayer groups that are in the community I'm in is small. And I was the wife who left the husband. And
Of course.
so I was in hiding for a while because I couldn't take. It's like, if you haven't walked in my shoes, don't you dare open your mouth to me.
Right.
So to avoid conflict, which I also don't like, I just kind of hid out and nursed my wounds. And then when I started going back to church, I started really just seeing things I did not like. Seeing it from the side of being a parishioner instead of being in the pastoral role.
Right. What were some of the things that you didn't like that you saw?
The use and abuse of people as volunteers was big, because if you're in the church, then you should be available 24/7, and the family comes last on your list. The second
I always found that really weird.
Yeah. And that happened to me. I volunteered a lot and doing things at the church, and my kids will tell you to this day that mom always had something going on, and I didn't have time. I put the priority of being at the church and involvement there to things for my jobs that would have been like, at a job, you have a family setting, I worked in the dental field as well as in the office, and our little dental field family would have weddings and funerals and all that. And so many of those I couldn't go to because I had to be at the church. And that didn't go over well with people. They didn't understand that. But
yeah,
we were
I can understand that.
Yeah. Well, I know what your background is. I know that for a little while, as I was searching, I went into the Messianic stuff, just looking for what's the truth,
Right.
And when I found that, even the Old Testament that we use as Christians is not truly the same thing. Not the way it's taught, honey.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on the original, I guess we'll say, but there has been some.
It's been Christianized. The teaching of it.
Translations. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's
that
been
I would
Christianized. So, anyway, yeah, lots of experiences. I had opportunities to help deliver somebody from demons and pray that out of them and pray people through. I hate to say it, but I was involved one time in a conversion therapy thing that I totally am so sad I ever did that. And seeing the damage that it did, hindsight, I hate to even think I was a part of that. The demonology stuff was horrendous. Some of the stuff I got involved in that was so sad. Now, one woman in particular, it was a severe mental illness situation.
Oh boy.
But we were called to help her husband deliver her, and it was just horrendous.
Like an exorcism?
Yes, actually, he can I tell you about it? Because
You sure can.
It was very real. These were people that we knew who were also involved in ministry. And he called us and he said that his wife was just behaving very erratically. Would I come up well, my husband and I at the time come up to help perform an exorcism. And so we went up there, and when we got there, he had her on a mattress on the floor in their living room. Oh, he was a big guy. He was a big guy, and she was not much bigger than me. I think she's shorter than me, actually. Anyway, he was straddled over her, commanding these devils to come out, and some of the foulest language was coming out of her mouth. I mean, it was just,
I'd be swearing too.
Yeah,
if he was
really. It was just awful. And I mean, the first thing we did, of course, is thinking, okay, we're going to do what we know we're supposed to do in an exorcism. And so we do the thing, the prayer and the anointing and all that kind of stuff. And then I step back and I see this is not working. To me, if the power of the name of Christ and the blood of Christ is so strong, it shouldn't take you straddling somebody on a mattress,
right?
For hours. I mean, I don't know how many hours he had been doing this before he called us.
Maybe so, God was busy, a different galaxy.
True. Or so finally, I contacted our overseer and went off in another room, and I said, this is not demonic. Can you please talk to him and let us get her to a hospital? So it took a while and it took some convincing, but we got her to a hospital and got her admitted into the psychiatric ward. And she was bipolar with some schizophrenia, was in there for a long time. And after they got her medication level and everything, she was a totally different person. And he changed his views on demonology after seeing what he went through with that. That was the most horrendous incident because it was so long and it was just so heartbreaking to see what was happening. Number one, and what was going on between them. But number two, that I was seeing there was no power in the name of Jesus.
Right.
And
at least not in that situation.
Right. And that was the beginning. That was another, I had these questions piling up inside of me, and I wasn't getting answers. I wasn't getting answers. And so I had been on my own for a little bit, and I'd heard about Oz leaving the faith. Of course I did. My baby sister contacted me many times over it. We cried and prayed together that he was now such a heathen. Yes. And he wasn't brought up this way, and what's it going to take to get him back and all this kind of stuff. But I started listening to his show.
Okay.
And then one day I called him and I said, I want to come up to Fort Wayne and meet you for pizza. So we went for atheist pizza. That's what I call.
Wait, is there such a thing?
Well, Pasta Mike will tell you there used to be atheist pizza, which Pasta, you owe me one. But I told Austin, I said, now I'm not here to try to convert you, which he thought was hysterical. I just said, tell me what's going on in your life. And I started opening up about questions I had.
Okay.
And we sat there for quite a while, and he was making a lot of sense and didn't know at the time he was answering questions I had. And he gave me some titles of books to read and YouTube shows and different things. And we kept in close contact several times a week for the first few weeks. And eventually I saw the light, brother. I saw the light. I was delivered.
Yeah, from yeah. I hear you. Delivered from a really bad belief system.
Oz will tell you that I didn't know this until much later. He said, after we left, we each got in our cars and I pulled away first. And he said he sat there in his car going, what the hell just happened with my Aunt Kathy? Because I'm the one who brought evangelical Christianity into the whole family.
Right.
I got saved.
Working for CBN, I could see that.
Yeah, but it happened way before. It was when I was in the Jesus People movement stuff that I went home, and my brother, my mother, I went home to get my dad saved.
Mhm.
And it was Mama and my brother and my two sisters, who I led them to the Lord at, my sisters were like 7 and 5.
Wow.
And then Mom and my brother was a teenager. And so then here I am when now I'm out of it. And sadly,
Are
my
they
two
still in it?
Well, sadly, my two sisters have passed away.
Okay.
My brother is a pastor.
Mhm.
He's
It's all your fault too.
It is. It's all my fault. I used to go to his church and I couldn't take it anymore. He's a very old-timey. The Bible is the inerrant word of God. And it's Oz is a filthy rotten heath. And nothing's changed.
But we love him.
Yes, we do. We do love him. He does have a good head on his shoulders when he uses it.
Yeah. You see that, Oz? You got to get the dig in.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's just our family. I mean, we
Right.
we just like to dig.
Yeah,
But
ours does the same thing.
Anyway, what else would you like to hear about this granny?
Well, you mentioned a little earlier about things seem to be good with your family thus far. Like, was there any sort of surprises on their end when you decided, being that you were the one that really kind of got everyone into it? Were they shocked or surprised at all when you found your way free? And were there any questions they were asking you, like on why you decided to leave the faith?
The two family members that, I shouldn't say it this way, but I will. The two family members that mean the most to me with their opinion are my two daughters.
Okay.
And they had deconstructed before Mom did.
Okay.
And they were very happy that mom wasn't that judgmental woman anymore.
She broke the chains. Woohoo!
Yes. Yeah. And actually, Oz and the girls and I did a couple shows together.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And that was real freeing. And it was hard because they asked me questions. I didn't want to have to answer in public, but I did.
Well, good for you. Good for you.
My brother and of course, Mama's still living. She's almost 90, and I just won't go there with her.
Okay.
Yeah,
as far as she knows, you're still a believer then.
Right. And I just play along.
At this point, there's nobody wants to break her heart right now, right?
Right. I don't think my brother gets it or believes it, and we don't really talk about it. And that's part of it is me, because I don't like conflict, and he's my only living sibling.
Right.
And I just can't go there and have division with the only one that's left.
Right.
So it'll happen. But I haven't been real direct with him about it. And right now Mom is living with him. So when I see her, I see him. And it's just at an odd place. And
in time.
Yeah. And it's still, they're still fresh. I mean, I've only been deconstructed, if that's deconverted, whatever you want to call me, a little over a year to really fully say, this is it. I no longer believe. And I know at first I was reading everything and watching and reading and consuming. I mean, I wasn't watching any other kind of TV or reading any other kind of books other than what is all of this new life about, to the point that it was stressing me out. And then Oz and I got the brilliant idea that I do a show I was doing, Vintage Explorer, on the T.A.N.G network. And it just all got to be too much. And then when my sister passed, and I just had to take time off.
Right.
I was just, burning a candle at both ends. But I'm working on some new things that I'm not privy to release any dates yet, but it's looking like I'm going to be back. Maybe a new name and a new look, but
awesome.
There's some stuff in the works that I just can't get it out of my system, I guess.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I'm 100% behind you on that for sure.
Well, thanks. I just want to help. I don't know. I just am so sad to see how people are so caught up, and people in my age bracket who I know are sitting on a pew, not believing anything anymore, too scared to say they're not believing it anymore, and too scared to leave the community.
Yeah.
And I do know that leaving the community is really, really difficult for some people, And
like suddenly your whole support system's pulled out from under you.
Right. And it's hard. And the older you get, the harder it is.
Sure.
And if your children have, like, I have 4 grandsons, ages range from 10 to 21. And the one that has the younger kids is the one that lives closest to me, but she's so busy in their lives that we don't have lots of time together, And so I don't have a core group of people here that I can reach out and touch. Everybody's on, through YouTube and all the people I've met. I can't wait for Better.
Yeah.
I'm going to plug Better because we're going to be able to really hug each other and really, see each other. And
I'll be there.
Oh, yay. Well, I claim a hug from you, boy. I do.
You got it, Kathy. You got it.
We were brought up one side of the grandparents that were a hugging bunch. So my hillbilly grandparents were huggers.
Well, when you first sort of you found your way out, you realized that this was just not for you anymore, and you stopped believing in all this stuff. What kind of things ran through your head? Like, was there sort of a feeling of being lost a little bit before you sort of found your footing as an atheist? Or
I think my first thoughts were, I was angry at myself for believing the BS for so long and for holding on for so long. Just one, because I tend to be a very hopeful, loyal kind of person to a fault. And I know that's my personality. And I kept holding on that maybe this prayer will be answered, or maybe it was actually something that my youngest sister and I, Oz's mom, had a discussion in my early deconstruction, that she'd had several illnesses. And I was up to Fort Wayne visiting with her, and she looked at me one day and she said, Kathy, I figured maybe I just haven't been praying right. That's why God's never healed me.
Right.
And I didn't react right away. I didn't respond. I was leaving that day. I came home, and 2 days later, I sent her an email and I said, Sherry, do you really believe that God requires of you to say certain words or be in a certain position to hear you in order to heal you? And I think with that, I knew that I didn't believe anymore. And then in the reading I did, the thing that really clinched it for me was when I read the Epic of Gilgamesh and saw,
the same story.
The story of the flood happening 1,000 or 2,000 or however many thousands it was before it was, in the scripture.
Utilized in the Old Testament.
Yeah. And
there are other
then,
versions of it too, by the
oh
way.
yeah. Well, I'm learning so much, and I'm
Yeah.
learning so much about the world around me. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like being in Christianity for 50 years was being inside of a bird cage. And I was dependent on people to feed me, to water me, to change my dirty cage. Somebody else did everything for me. And then suddenly the door was open. And I mean, I fluttered a while. I had to learn, and I'm still learning how to feed myself and how to.
Sure. Doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
I was not angry with anybody else other than myself. And I still don't feel an anger about it all. I have a disappointment that I think so many of the pastors that I had sat under didn't know themselves the lies they were speaking. I mean, because in the charismatic circles, you don't have to go to Bible college. I mean, and historically, I mean, I've done a lot of research from the beginning of our nation, especially with my heritage as Scottish and German, and when the Scottish came over and the Presbyterians couldn't provide enough pastors quickly enough who'd been schooled, that people just started picking up the Bible and doing it themselves. And this was, of course, down in the area I was just visiting, down in Western North Carolina and Tennessee area. And so some of the craziness, that's where it happened. And it was preached as gospel. And people figured because he said he was a man of God and God told him, that it's okay to handle rattlesnakes and, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, that's where some of this crap happened. And feeling the Holy Ghost and getting the shivers and all this kind of stuff, it didn't really happen anywhere else until some of this stuff started happening in the South Eastern United States early in the early 1800s. And then as they spread out, then they took it with them, and then it was all over the place. So uneducated, or they were in, like, even though I took a lot of Bible, it was circular reasoning.
Yep.
I studied the Bible with the Bible or books approved by the Christian school and didn't ever branch outside of that. And it's when you branch outside of that you really see the truth behind it.
That's right.
And
you mentioned the birdcage sort of idea that you had about. I seen one very similar, but it was two fish in a fishbowl that had little crosses on them, and then there was the atheist on the outside of the fishbowl in the actual ocean, and saying, and you think I'm the one that's lost or trapped or whatever it was, right? Like one of the participants in the chat had a quick question for you. Did you feel like you were doing something wrong when your prayers were not answered?
Oh yeah, a lot of times I had to go through is there sin in my life? Have I done something that's been displeasing to God? Or is there somebody I need to ask forgiveness for something that I may have done to offend them that's blocking my prayers? And also, am I in right relationship with my husband? Because that was a big thing. Even though scripture teaches that it's the man's prayers might not be answered if he's not in good relationship with his wife.
That's right. Yeah.
The teaching I was under was that the woman always had to be in right relationship with her husband.
I don't, you say that, and I'm like, what does that even mean?
I know.
We did the wedding thing. We have the rings. We had your blessing or whatever.
Right.
What do we need to do now to be in the right relationship?
Oh, so there's so that there's no reason to have quarrels, no reasons to have distance or anger between you and your relationship. And of course, you never go to bed angry with each other.
I tried to do that in any relationship I was ever in. That was kind of one of my things too, but I didn't actually need it in the Bible.
Right.
I just
Right.
figured
I
it's
mean, it's
probably
just
better
common
to do that.
sense. Yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of common sense, but yeah.
I
So
know.
yeah, I did. If prayers weren't answered, I always wondered why. And whenever my children were sick and I'd pray for them and it didn't do any good, I questioned it. I did always take them in for doctor's care, though. I didn't go the route of no doctors.
Good.
I wouldn't do that to them. But they were brought up with strict rules, you know, music they couldn't listen to, books they couldn't read, I mean, church life, especially for my youngest, there's 7 years between my two daughters. So the oldest one was out when the youngest one was coming up, and she was more in the purity culture than the older sister was.
Okay.
And so, oh yeah, I mean, it was tough on my kids. I was pretty strict, and I was the disciplinarian. I had pretty strict rules for them to follow, and Dr. Dobson was the go-to. And yeah, I don't think they want to even get close to anything with Dobson.
do you wish you could maybe go back and maybe not be quite as harsh?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the thing that last year when the girls and I did the shows with Oz, and then we spent some time together after that, I said, you know, I really, really wish I could undo so much. And we are rebuilding relationship, because for especially my oldest daughter, there was a long period of time where we hardly communicated at all. And that was another part of my deconstruction, is when I realized that my girls were being distant from me, and I knew it was my religion. I knew it. And in my deconstruction
ways, yeah, I guess.
Well, I mean, and they were both adults by then.
Sure.
And yet they didn't want to be around. I didn't realize how judgmental I was and how opinionated I was in certain things until they let me know after the fact. After I deconverted, then we had some real honest talks, you know, and I had to take it. I mean, I had to this mama shed a lot of tears, you know, in being ashamed of some of the strictness I had with them. But they started to realize that I was doing the best I thought I could with them.
Yeah.
And but we lived in, you know, pastors are poor. We lived in great poverty. We didn't go hungry, but it was poor. And my ex had 3 boys, so we wound
almost
up
a Brady Bunch thing.
It was one shy of a Brady Bunch. I was so glad I couldn't have kids anymore after he came along. But yeah, so it was tough. Here I was raising 3 boys and 2 daughters, and I didn't know anything about raising boys. I didn't know when to let them wrestle, and when there was blood, what do I do? When do I intervene and bandage
each other? It's all good. Just let
well, I learned, but that was a riot to try and raise them, and the dad figure being gone most of the time. It was a trip, but I spent a lot of time on my knees. All it did was chap my knees, but
Quill says with the boys wrestling, just rub some dirt in it.
Okay. Thank you, Quill. Well, I'll tell my daughter that now with her young boys.
Just rub some. It builds up the immune system.
Right? Yeah. Well, I really didn't know to what degree is this normal, and to when do I interfere? Because girls didn't do that.
Yeah. Well, girls fight too, but it's different.
It is very different. I never have seen a girl's fight that could be not in growing up that could be so hurtful physically as some of the boys' fights.
You didn't know my sister.
Well,
holy cow, she used to throw records at me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like little throwing stars.
You know,
little 45s, like
I can't. my brother chased me around the house with a knife. He says it was a kitchen knife. I say it was a butcher knife. And I turned around and slugged him and gave him a bloody nose, and I got in trouble.
Well, yeah. They often found that was just the way. The one that drew the blood ended up one being in trouble, even if the other one started it.
Right.
Yeah, my sister and I used to fight quite a bit as kids. A year difference between us, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
That makes
well, we're both adopted, so I was adopted first, and then she was adopted like a year and a month after I was been there. So yeah. Anyway,
I felt like I was adopted many times over, going from foster home to foster home.
There's got to be at least some good memories from those situations.
Just the one that was the girls' group home has the best memories. The others,
not so much.
No, and sadly, the foster care system is in need of help even today, all these years later.
Yep, you're in Canada as well.
Yeah,
most of the time, I believe.
Forgetting you're in Canada.
Yeah, Canada, eh? But I know here it just seems to be the only reason these things even exist is so the parents can just make money off the government for doing it.
Ditto here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
sadly.
Air says it's a broken system. I agree. It's a very broken system.
It is. I don't think in any of the homes except the group home did I ever personally see any of the monies applied to me for things that I needed.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. To get new clothes or anything like that.
Sure.
It was usually my grandparents or an auntie who got me clothes. But I never got spending money or anything from any of the foster homes except the girls' group home.
Wow.
So that tells you, something about, and that was a long time ago. I mean, only my hairdresser knows for sure.
I love that expression.
Yes, and I'm not willing to give up this little bit of red in here yet. I tried it a few weeks ago, and it's like, no, I'm not a gray-headed old lady yet.
I'll do that for you. I'm the gray.
Okay, you take it on for me. Tell them, you want to see Gray? Go turn into Neil. Turn on Neil.
Neil.
Yeah,
Neil's the Gandalf the Gray guy over there. I think the red looks great. You actually.
Oh, thanks.
You remind me very much of my biological mom.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well.
So I instantly like you just because of that. She passed away, mind you, in 2013. She had an aneurysm. Yeah. Yeah, but I did get to know her. They discovered me in the year 2000.
Oh, good.
So I still see my biological dad and the one sister that I have left because I also lost my other biological sister in a motorcycle accident, which was tragic.
Yeah, it's hard when you lose siblings, distant or close. Both of my baby sisters are gone, and it's just not right. No,
it's not, but it's unfortunately death is a part of life.
Yes, it is.
You just don't know when it's going to hit you in the face.
Yeah,
exactly.
So,
well, Kathy, I think it's pretty safe to say we did a pretty good job here tonight, I think, talking about your deconversion. And I wanted to thank you for joining me for the hour.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm just really glad to be able to share anything that might be helpful, or
I do this.
That's why.
It's exactly why I
tell our stories.
Yeah.
And I'm finally realizing that. Yeah.
Yeah. I've gotten emails from people saying, how much the show has helped them. So all of you folks that have been guests on my show, just know that your words are being heard by people that need to hear them.
Oh, good.
So I'm going to keep doing it. And any of you guys out there in the chat that haven't been on the show yet and would like to come on and share some, just hit me up on Twitter or Facebook in the messages, or you can hit my email address, which is linked below. If you want to say hi to Kathy, I have her Facebook page linked below. If you want to say hi and tell her how much you appreciated her story, you can do that. As I mentioned earlier today, or earlier at the beginning of the show, I decided, I made an executive decision. Mikey's not with us, so what I'm going to do, we're not going to do an after party tonight, but what we're going to do is both Kathy and myself are going to end up over on Oz's channel for his anniversary, second anniversary. And I was there for the first one, so there was no way I was going to miss the second one.
Right.
So we'll be over there with Oz. So if you want to come and hang out with us for a little bit more time, just head over to the T.A.N.G channel there and check out the anniversary show. But thank you, Kathy, again for being the guest tonight. I was pleased as punch when you told me you wanted to come on.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to, hopefully share something that'll help somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I always hope that's what happens. All right, guys. Thank you guys out there in the chat for hanging out with us. I very much appreciate you guys for all your support that you have for the show. And thank you also to my wonderful patrons. I wouldn't be able to do this without you. So hearts out to you guys. And we're going to call this one done and in the books. And don't forget, head over to Oz's channel to check out the anniversary show, because Kathy and myself will be over there in due time. So, yeah, and that's about it. Yeah, you, Oz. Easy there, Ox. And anyways, guys, like I always say at the end of the interviews, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time. Come by on Saturday, and we'll have some fun then. We'll do an after party that night. All right, guys, take care. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.